Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Digital Artcast. I'm glad you stopped by to check it out and listen to what I have to say, and also check out the awesome guests we have today. Kind of been setting a trend recently of revisiting older guests who were on previously and catch up with them in their career to see kind of where the world has taken them recently. This particular guest we had on, I think almost 2 years ago now, possibly more. And at the time, he was studying to work within the film industry, and so far has been a great and interesting journey that he's been on. So we thought we'd get him back on today to talk to you guys about his experiences and things that he's learned from working and the industries that he's worked in. I'll let probably him speak about it a bit more, but please welcome back Mr. Ian Vicknair. Hey Ian.
Hey, Gordon, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. So yeah, this is I think next to Max, you're also one of the second time guests we've had back on the podcast. So the last time we spoke, I think it was relatively early in your career where you were doing like a lot of advertising work or freelance stuff. So what have you kind of done since then? I guess in summarize, but then what's been your kind of journey since we last spoke to you?
Well, first off, thanks for having me back. That's
Of course.
awesome.
Yep.
Man, since the last time we talked, it was doing,
I think it was like 2018, something like that. It was just like maybe the kind of the end of 2018, I think was the last time we spoke.
I think something
I
like
think
that.
I'll just so let's just double check.
Yeah.
I've got it open here. So yeah, so December 7th, 2018. So yeah,
Mhm.
just over about a year and a half
Man,
ago. Yeah.
man, that went quick.
Yeah.
Man, that went quick.
Well, in the middle of this,
In
in the middle of this
mm,
fucking disease-riddled world, time
yeah,
isn't going quick enough, in my opinion. But yeah,
right? No,
yeah,
I think time right now is going even quicker.
yeah, man.
Uh, but since then, man,
Hmm.
my world has been flipped over and over again.
Yeah.
From New York to back to Minneapolis, working for a small agency there,
Hmm.
and then moved up to Montreal to work in movies, and I'm still currently there.
Hmm.
And right now, everything's kind of up in the air if I'll be going back to the US, and if I do, it's going to be LA,
Right.
or try to stay here as long as I can and hope that work comes back here eventually.
Right. Yeah.
Everything's right now just up in the air. Nobody knows what's going to be happening.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Which is
yeah,
also kind of shitty for people who have made like especially the kind of
mm,
streak you were on where you were working. I mean, recently you've just worked on uh two kind of major films. I don't know if you want to mention what ones because
the
I know
well,
one in particular you weren't the end result wasn't too thrilling, but yeah.
it was I came on at the end of Maleficent,
Uh-huh.
and then went straight on to Cats afterwards.
Right. And that was
Um,
Maleficent 2 specifically.
Yeah, yep. Maleficent 2, which was that movie was fun to work on. I mean, even though I was at the very end of it, it was a good experience. I didn't do too much on it, but it was still fun.
Right.
And then went straight on to Cats,
Hmm.
and that one, that that's its own movie, man.
I says you
It's
could have its
yeah,
own podcast basically about the things that kind of went wrong specifically with that movie, but I think it's a
it.
shame that people who
Mhm,
worked on that now have kind of almost got this
mhm,
this black spot
yeah. The
that they want to
artists
take.
Yeah, the artists who worked on that movie did an absolute badass job, hands
Oh
down,
yeah, I mean, like
all of them.
technically it was an achievement. Really, it was
Mhm.
like the hours spent on that and the effects that actually happened. I think it's just a lot of decisions that were made higher up that eventually trickled down to make yeah. It was
Yeah,
kind of like we talked about this.
that
Me
yeah,
not being a VFX artist or involved in the industry, but when we talked about like Sonic's initial reveal, right, for the Sonic
mhm,
movie, how that look, fans almost like overwhelmed the studios and
mhm,
were like, "You need to change this. It looks horrific."
yeah.
And when they did,
The
like,
mhm.
it looked 10 times better. But then I think with Cats, it was a similar thing, right?
In a way, yeah. I mean, overall, because I can't say too much about it, but
Of course.
overall, that movie was it's a perfect testimony uh if you have the guts, if you have the ability to withstand working in movies or
Hmm.
not.
Yeah,
It really tested you.
yeah. There was a
Um,
lot of difficult hours and late nights trying to get
yeah.
stuff fixed, and especially I think because of the outcry initially from the public, there was like obviously then the
Mhm.
emphasis was on you guys to change things or make things look better or
In
alter shots.
in a way, it reminded me of my first year of college. On the first day, my teacher comes up and goes like in the middle of the classroom, going, "All right, there's 64 of you. Uh, Here's the way I grade. Any spelling mistakes or grammar errors or
Mhm,
punctuations, automatic F. If you don't follow the design rules, automatic F."
mhm, God,
And within like the first 10 minutes of his speech,
mhm.
like two people got up and walked out.
Oh
And
God,
then as you got into that semester, we went from like 64 people down to like 30 people.
oh wow.
And that was the same thing with this movie, was it
Mhm,
really tested you if you
mhm.
were capable of working in movies or not.
Yeah, yeah. It would
Um,
have been extremely difficult work and very
mhm.
time consuming.
It was tough work, but uh, the outcome of it, I think, was worth it. The
Yeah,
artist did a badass job on it.
yep,
You either you struggled through it and you learned and you got better, or you didn't.
right.
Um, but just the end result still, I think, was good, and it was
Yes,
decent enough.
yes,
So
of
I
course.
just leave it at that.
Of course, yeah, but then of course, then you also took the leap into. I mean, for me, like comparing it to games, it was like AAA
Mm,
studios, right? It was like going from, working on like maybe an indie title to working on like God of War or something like that caliber, because you were
yeah.
working on, I can't remember who Maleficent was with. It was
Mm,
either Universal or Warner Brothers, but yeah, like those big studios, then having those on your
yeah.
resume, adds.
Yeah. I mean, I I've kind of started to realize, I mean, for me personally, that the movies honestly don't matter, in the
Mhm.
sense of like I'm not there to get a credit on that movie. I'm there to do a job
Yes,
ultimately.
yeah,
So to get that movie title, for me, I honestly don't care anymore. At first, I was like, "Oh man, I'm going to be working on movies," but
yep,
then I kind of had a weird hit in life of like it. I'm not there to get the name of the movie. I'm
right,
there to do the job because that's what I'm hired to do.
yes.
I'm there to go in and be. I was like a hired mercenary to go in and like, all right, let's execute this and get it done.
Yes.
And that's the way I see what I do now. I mean, I
Mhm.
still love what I do 100%. I am very biased about map painting. I think it is one of the most unique aspects of film.
Of course.
Uh, that's just my own opinion on that. But
Yeah.
there is a certain part of it that I think people need to realize, is that the name of the movies doesn't really matter. Same with even the companies. They don't exactly. I know some people are like, Ian, you're an idiot for saying this, but it's the truth. I'm there to do a job.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, I
Um,
think, yeah, like even when I was talking about that, I think what I was trying to illustrate was that it was good to get these on your resume because then
mhm,
that helps you with more work. You want to do, you don't want to stop working, of course. You love the
mhm.
thing you do, so you want to just keep doing it. So,
Yeah.
it's not because you're like, you can say to people, oh, I worked in Maleficent, blah, blah. You can say, well, I'll get to work on a major motion
Mhm.
picture, and then that also allows me to make on
Yeah.
what more major motion. So, like, it's the same way, like, if you get to work at Blizzard, it's like, you're not really there because you want to be like, oh, I worked in World of Warcraft or whatever, but you
Mhm.
can say, oh, I worked in this amazing
Yeah.
AAA studio with all these super talented people, and I get to do more work now with all these more talented
Exactly.
people. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's less about the accolade; it's more about the
Mhm.
feeling of pride in your own work and your own job.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And the journey with it was tough, but it was good.
yeah.
I'm
Well, I
happy
mean,
I got it.
yeah, 100%. But then, of course, now you've unfortunately been furloughed because of the
Mhm.
virus and a lot of the studios have
Yeah.
closed, and so it's just
Mhm.
shitty timing, really. It's just unfortunate that it's came to the point where you've kind of got into this swing or this rhythm of
Mhm.
of working on these big productions, and then it's
Mhm.
all grinded to a halt, which super sucks, obviously.
Mhm. Oh, it does, and that's why I'm at the point of like, all right, well, let's think about this. We have the virus, everything's at a halt.
Yep.
Movies are on halt,
Yes.
so we are locked at home. And what
Mhm.
do you do with yourself? So
Mm.
I'm going, well, okay, I'm not good at 3D, so let's fix that. Let's start
Yes.
learning it.
Yes.
And I keep telling people this, like, if right now is the perfect time to level up hardcore on something that you're not good at.
Well, 100%, I can agree with you. Like, I mean, I know there was a kind of, I'm going to say meme, but there was an image on Facebook. People were sharing what it was like if you
Mhm,
don't come out of the lockdown with newer skills or newer
mhm.
hobbies
Yeah,
and a better skill set, then it wasn't time you lacked; it was discipline. Um,
exactly.
and I think you and I have definitely both been embracing that. I mean, you've obviously been doing some 3D work because I've been helping you learn
Mhm.
some stuff,
Yeah.
and then I've been doing some, concept and illustration stuff and
Mhm,
learning anatomy. So um, I think it's definitely a good time to hone those skills and
mhm,
push your learning and development even further. Because who knows when we're going to get an opportunity like this again, where it's this
mhm.
quiet almost.
Yeah, and part of it is not just learning the new skills just to acquire them. There's other
Hmm.
benefits to that. First
Of
off,
course,
it's like you can be like, "Hey, my price point just went up,"
yes.
just because you now have that skill acquired. And
Hmm.
then it also gives you more diversity in applying for jobs. It can't just be a map painter. Well, now I can apply for a 3D map painting
Right.
or 3D environments,
Yes.
comping because I I freaking love Nuke.
Right.
Um, I'm trying to give myself a nice diversity of after this virus ends, which it eventually will.
Yes.
Studios are going to be hiring like crazy,
Of course.
and so at that point, you got to be ready for it,
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
So for anyone that's trying to work on their portfolios, now's the time to go, okay, what do I really suck at? What am I not good at?
Yeah.
And let's devote 1 month to like, okay, for example, like Substance Painter, I downloaded that, got it, and
Mhm.
I did nothing but an entire week of Substance just to learn the program. Then a
Right.
week later, did the same thing with Speed Tree, and those two
Right.
programs are fairly easy to learn. So it's
Yes.
like, okay, now I have two new skills on my resume.
Right.
Now let's go more in Maya. And I'm just trying to break things down easier so that eventually I can go in for jobs much more confident and at a higher level to be like, yes, I'm your person.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, because then the more skills that you put around your
Mhm,
initial learning, so you can map paint like a motherfucker, but then obviously
mhm.
if you can also 3D comp and you can do stuff in Nuke,
Yeah.
and so then again you're starting to get to the point where you're at high, like a super
Mhm,
high level
yeah.
in studios. Although of course a lot of
It-
the stuff you're learning just now is like the beginning of learning. So, you're not as confident in Substance as you are in
mhm,
Photoshop. So,
mhm. But
yeah.
the other part with it is I'm really pushing quality.
Mhm.
I'm not one for quantity over quality.
Right.
I just I'm one like, okay, if I'm gonna do a project, so like I like my new piece that I'm working on, I've put in going, okay, I want this to incorporate Substance, Speed
Mhm.
Tree, Maya, Redshift, Mega Scans.
Right.
Uh, I I'm modeling myself a few of the elements in the foreground so I can learn how to model UV and
Mhm.
texture. So I'm trying to take a project and incorporate everything into it, but
Right.
still be smart about how I'm incorporating those
Yep.
elements,
Right.
and that's going to give me the portfolio work that I need to show.
Yeah, essentially you're kind of wanting to be like a kind of one man band. Like, you want to
Mhm,
be able to work an entire studio's pipeline in one project, so that when it comes to interviewing, you can kind of see yourself fitting into any
mhm.
aspect of that pipeline.
And the other biggest reason for me is I want to make my own shit.
Of course. Yes. Yeah.
I really like making my own stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course, you have something in production right now. I don't know if you want to
Mhm,
talk about it, but like you do have something that's ongoing and has been ongoing for a while, and is
mhm.
still ongoing. And is that
Yeah, I've been working on my own film for this is my third year doing it,
right?
and some people ask me like, why is it taking you so freaking long for it? It's like, well, when I first started, I knew nothing about 3D, so to go
Right.
straight into I want to make a full CG film
Yep.
is pretty ballsy.
Of course.
And so I'm going, okay, well, I need to start acquiring some of these skills.
Hmm.
So that's why it's taken so long to do this film. But I'm
Yeah.
completely okay with it
Yeah.
because the team that is on this, they have been absolutely phenomenal.
Hmm.
They've been helping me out and teaching me, and
Hmm.
uh, I've been teaching some of the other people about like how to do stuff in Nuke or map painting or
Hmm.
whatever is needed.
Yes.
Um, and the other part is I want to be getting into art direction. So this is a perfect side skill that I'm learning over the years to
Hmm.
learn how to do art direction. So that
Yes.
when the time comes, I've got the portfolio work, and I'm basically doing a portfolio piece that's going to benefit me in the long run.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I
It's
mean,
I'm
it's
putting
like,
it in the future.
yeah, when we've talked about, Sava in the past, much love, respect to Sava, shout out to him.
Absolutely,
Uh,
yeah.
but like, Sava was
Mhm,
doing, smaller projects or on a smaller scale previously till,
mhm,
like he talks about, the huge thing that was doing the IFCC titles,
mhm,
like in 2017 or 2016, whenever that was. And, he, his career almost kind of shot up overnight where he was, getting offered
mhm.
directing jobs and then
Yeah.
of course now working with actor studios. So
Mhm,
those pieces can be very monumental in people's careers where it shows studios that you can work a project start to finish,
mhm.
apply
Exactly.
direction, apply management, apply your visual style, and have something very professional at the end of it, something very high level.
Exactly. And it's not an easy task, man, to art direct an entire project where everyone's spaced around the entire world.
Yeah,
it
oh,
takes a lot of
definitely.
time, but
Yeah.
I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's a great challenge. It
Hmm.
hasn't been easy to problem solve on
Hmm.
certain core parts. I've had
Yes.
to Google the crap out of things to understand what people are talking about.
Yeah.
Um, but it's I'm happy I'm having that part of my life. It's as much as I love map painting, whatever. This is a nice side stream to put my brain on a different focus whenever like my brain's just hurting from map painting.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm definitely enjoying it and liking that.
Yeah. And
Uh,
then you're also building relationships
yeah.
with other artists and with a team that you feel
Mhm,
is going to be one you can be working with in future projects, or if you want to make another film, or like I know
mhm.
Sava has a close knit group of people who he
Yeah.
works with on all his projects, including
Mhm.
like Freight, like his latest one. Freight was incredible. I thought it was one of his best
Right.
pieces. It was, yeah,
Mhm,
the bit at the end of that movie where the guy's kind of like buckled over and all the red doors start
mhm,
opening, and it was like somebody in Access made a Photoshop pass where it was like they put Sava's name on the guy and then all the red lights were incoming job offers.
mhm.
I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much 100%. But yeah, like those projects are I think a real test of character also, just showing that, you
Well,
know,
the
yeah.
for me, my favorite from Sava was the Playground's main title, because
Oh
that
yeah, of
one,
course. Yeah.
yeah, when I saw that one, that brought me straight back to being in Bulgaria, in the orphanage, and the stuff that happened there. It
Right. Okay.
was so surreal for me to see that.
Yeah,
But
because we've talked about this previously with people who've been in the podcast before and talked to you about it as well about
mhm,
the American working at studios and stuff like that. But then
yeah.
your heritage is originally Bulgarian. You were born and
Mhm.
raised there, right?
I was born there, and I'm adopted from there when I was like six and a half, nearly
Right.
7. But
Yep.
yeah, that was almost a fourth of my life.
Yeah.
Um, so I definitely am grateful that I have that European heritage, and I did live in Europe most of my life, actually.
Yeah.
Europe and Africa is a majority of my life.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's a thing, we've talked about also off the podcast is that, you would want to try and revisit those roots at one point,
mhm,
maybe spend a little time in the European market and see
mhm.
what that could also bring to your career, because Europe
Yeah.
is very emerging when it comes to VFX and film work
Mhm.
also. So of
Definitely. I think it would be fun to live back in Europe. Just have
yeah,
to see how the cards play out.
of course, yeah, you
Um,
want to think about your career obviously, and what's
mhm.
going to be best for that. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think LA in general would probably be a lot better, especially if it was movie specifically. You wanted to be
Mhm.
continue work with that, then of course a lot of the work for that is in Los Angeles. So
Mhm.
um, just because of the way the studio system's set up there. But I think also we talked about how a
Mhm.
lot of that work now is also getting farmed out to studios in the European market and other parts of the world. So
Mhm.
I don't think it would be impossible for you to live and work in Europe and also work on major motion
Mhm.
pictures and other things like that. So yeah,
Yeah, just have to see how it really plays out. I mean, I'm still pretty young, so I
yeah, of
can
course,
get
yeah.
anywhere. Um,
Unlike us old fucks, but yeah.
uh, Man, sometimes I feel old because a friend recently taught me the term GG, which I'm just like, what
That's more a
the
gamer thing though than just like a young
yeah?
person
And
thing.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what
yeah.
the hell does that mean? And he's like, GG.
Good game.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I'm like, yeah, and he says good game, and I'm looking at it going, why can't you just say that?
Oh, yeah. Well, everything's a
Like,
shorthand because the idea is that
yeah.
when you're a gamer, if you're moving and shooting and doing other things, because you're so busy doing those things, you try and just quickly type the shortest acronym you can, to be like, oh, did a GG, blah, blah, or LOL. So it's like it's a time thing basically.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, like I think in essence it's I mean, but then age is like irrelevant. I mean, I'm turning 35 in August,
Yeah.
but I don't really feel like I'm turning 35. I feel like I'm turning 15.
Mhm.
But I don't know, man. Like it's a thing that I think is great about this industry is that guys like even Sid Mead were working well up until their 60s and beyond.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
we're still producing really awesome work. So I think you're lucky in this industry that as long as you want to
Mhm.
continue working, you can. And I think we're living in this age. I think Ian
Mhm.
McCaig has talked about it in an
Yeah.
interview I think he done years ago, where you're living in this age where people like in their 30s are painting and drawing and doing work like they've been in the industry for 40 years
Yeah.
because everybody now is so obsessed with learning and so obsessed
Well,
with you know
the other part of it is people who are older who get into the field of art
yes.
actually and when I say in the field of art of drawing and painting and sketching, that
Hmm.
they are able to actually sketch more realistically than those who are new younger students, even when they're
Right,
just starting out. And
right,
it's simply just because they have a better understanding of what reality is, that they know
right.
how to, they've had the experiences, they've had the bullshit, they've
Hmm.
dealt with everything, that they
Hmm.
know what they can draw the difference between reality and fiction,
Right.
and that they when they're drawing that object that's in front of them or that
Hmm.
subject, they know
Yes.
exactly how it looks and can imitate it easier.
Right.
And I've even noticed that as I've been getting older, is that when I was drawing in college, I was drawing stuff that just wasn't there. But
Hmm.
now if I try to draw an apple, I
Hmm.
can look at it and be like, okay, this is what that object is, and here's what
Yeah.
makes that thing up.
Yes. Yeah. You've got a better appreciation, I think, for the world around you when you're older as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you just part of it is just you just learn not to give a shit about so much.
Yeah, yeah, I feel you, man. I definitely feel you on that, not giving a shit. So, like, yeah, I
Like,
mean, like,
yeah.
yeah, it's like you can have, almost in this industry, there's points where you will also meet artists or people
Mhm.
that don't agree with your worldviews or
Mhm.
don't agree with what you've got to say. But then, at the end of the day, when we're all dead and buried,
Mhm.
nothing's really going to matter. So,
Oh,
if
see,
if yeah,
for me, I would disagree with that. The only thing that matters after you're dead, it's
hmm,
not your art, it's
hmm,
not your money, it's
hmm,
not uh, anything of physical value
right,
whatsoever. None
uh
of that
huh,
fucking matters. What
yes,
absolutely fundamentally matters is your influence on other people. Did you leave the world behind a better place by being an asshole or a good human being?
yes,
So I've told some people about this, like, I'm not in the game of art. I am in
Yeah,
the game of influence in a
right.
different manner.
Hmm.
And thankfully, my art is a part of that influence. We can go down like this rabbit hole of something else,
Yeah,
man, if you
that's,
want.
it's a deep
It's a
conversation to get in.
yeah,
No, I
it's a
know what you mean, man.
huge
Like
rabbit hole.
I'm not saying obviously like that. You need to be an asshole to people, and if
Mhm,
you are, who cares? Because we're all going to be dead. It's more just like, I think people get caught up on stuff that
mhm.
is in the
It's
grand scheme
irrelevant.
of things. Yeah, like I mean, I was this is going to sound really weird, but
Mhm.
I was watching Crocodile Dundee the other day. Have you ever seen that film?
Yeah. Oh, man,
Okay,
it's been
yeah.
ages.
Oh god, so good. But
Yeah.
but then he was talking about, like, they're sitting in the reservation and they're talking about
Mhm,
when he the woman at the time saying to Mick, how do you feel on world issues? Because he doesn't really give a shit about anything that's outside of Australia. He's like, to me, this is my whole world. And she's
mhm,
like, well, how do you feel about stuff like, the native Australian people who are trying to, claim land and stuff like that? And he was like, look at that rock up there. And she was like,
mhm,
okay. It's like, in 1,000 years when we're gone, that rock will still be there. So
mhm.
he's like, so people arguing over who it belongs to is irrelevant. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I mean, it's like, I think, like, I've started thinking more like that, where sure there's issues in the world, sure there's things you could argue to the death, and I mean, I'm going to hold my hands up and say I'm one of the worst for this, getting involved in either political discussions or things online, but I think it's hard when you're a certain age or at a certain point in your life, you're trying to give a shit about the world. You're trying to be included in arguments and things that are, you're trying to fight for people's rights or fight for equality. But then, like, a lot of people have said that, in a lot of years, these things kind of fall by the wayside
Mhm.
and things that are really important come to the surface.
It's good to care about everything,
Mhm.
absolutely, but
Yeah.
what matters with that care is how you go about it. How do you
Yeah.
talk about it? How do you put your actions forward with it?
Yes.
That's that's what's going to be left behind.
Yeah, totally.
And and it's something I try to teach people when I mentor them of like, hey, when I'm teaching people about map painting, I
Hmm.
try to direct them like, here's where the answer is. And
Hmm.
it's not because I'm saying I'm the master of everything. No, I'm not. Like, dear God,
Hmm.
no. I mean,
Yeah.
Jesus, no.
Yeah.
But I'm going in the sense of like, I have dealt with all that shit. I have gone into that other room that was the wrong door. And I'm here
Right.
to tell you, don't do that. Don't take my mistake. Go this way
Oh,
instead.
dude, I was just literally what you're saying is like, almost word for word.
Mhm.
I was watching on Kevin Hart and Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been listening to that and I resonated with that so
yeah. Kevin was
precisely.
it was so on point. It was like,
Mhm,
I've walked in so many wrong doors. I've done so many
mhm.
things wrong, and I'm not saying I'm like the expert, but I'm trying to show people now, like, I've went that wrong route. I've been down there. I
It's
know it's wrong. So yeah.
yeah, because there's the podcast The Art of Charm,
Hmm.
and in there's one an episode about the third door, which
Hmm.
is the first door is the one, and it this applies so well. That first door is the door that absolutely everyone is walking into. It's
Hmm.
walking into it's walking into a wall that has a painting of a door on it that people are
Hmm.
walking into and going, "Oh, ouch, that hurts."
Hmm.
And there's nothing that came out of it.
Hmm.
Then there's a second door of, "Hey, I'm trying to make a connection," and you're just not getting anywhere. Then
Hmm.
there's a third door that you walk in, and that's where all the magic happens, and you keep
Hmm.
going. It's like that back door behind the bar that you can walk into because you know who one of the waiters or waitresses is, and they let
Hmm.
you in. So and and so what I'm trying to do with people right now with my career, even though I'm still very new to all this, is
Right.
trying to direct people like, hey, don't go to door number one or two. Here's that third door, and here's how you get to it, because
Right.
you do have to hurdle over things, over obstacles to get to that third door,
Right.
and it's just it's like I've dealt with all that shit. I
Yeah.
know how to deal with it, so now I know where
Yes.
that third door is for absolutely anything.
Yeah.
And I just if I can help people get to that, great, awesome. And I know that if I was to die today, that what I left behind was that positive influence of people,
Hmm.
of helping people to get to where they need to be, of just not being an asshole, be nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think generally a lot of my passion for, or just my general enthusiasm for shouting about different topics or trying to help people has come from like a previous life experience where when I was really young, like I was, because of the way I was kind of raised is that I
mhm,
had some negative experiences through things I was doing, and I think having lived those now,
mhm,
I see in my 30s, I see a door for teaching people how to avoid those parts, the bad parts. But then it's difficult also because you don't want to, and this also goes to artists in general because we had this whole conversation about feedback the other week about
yeah,
you don't want to be telling people how to do things constantly because then it just comes off as like super preachy
right.
and like, and that's why I think when you're quiet almost about it, and like what, I think some of the most successful artists I've ever seen in this industry, for instance, people that are huge illustrators or people that, I mean, even like one of my buddies, John Avon. I mean, John is maybe
There,
a name not a lot of people know about, but John's a huge Magic the Gathering artist. In fact, one of the OGs, and he makes these incredible pieces for Magic the Gathering. But John isn't like super social on social media. He isn't out talking to everybody. But like I think the quieter, more
he's
reserved you are.
yeah, the he's not the one uh sniffing people out and putting his nose in everything. Yeah, he's not
Yeah.
putting his nose in everything. He's
Yes.
instead letting people sniff him out. That's a
Yeah.
terrible terminology or
Of
reference
course.
for it.
Yeah. No.
But
No. Yeah.
the idea is there, instead of going and putting your nose in everything and putting your little comment that
Hmm.
quite frankly a majority of people just don't care for,
Yeah.
it's I'm at the and I resonate with this is like I'd rather people come and ask me because they want my opinion and my advice. Does
Right.
that mean I'm absolutely right? No, I could be wrong.
Hmm.
But if you come to me to talk to me about it, well, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's study
As
the
long as that
facts.
opinion is sought out, yeah, rather than you just giving it without what's the word?
Mhm.
Unsolicited advice, when it's
Yeah,
just people just giving
yeah,
advice because they think that, and like, don't get me wrong, I'm very guilty of it because sometimes like I
mhm,
either think I'm right in certain situations or I just genuinely want to help people because I'm like, well, I've been down that road and I know what that end is going to feel like. So what, like even a friend of mine who was struggling with certain aspects in money, I was trying to say like, look, I previously have been in serious debt and struggled with cash. I'm trying to show you now that if you do this thing you're going to do, it's going to hinder you
mhm.
for a long time and make you feel.
But
And he's like, but then I can't stop him, right? He has to go
mhm,
through that himself to learn that.
right. And the other part with it to add on top of it is just I don't I've seen people just go in and just say like, "Hey, just listen to me."
Hmm.
When you have that kind of an attitude, you're going to get people immediately going against your judgment instantly.
Right. Yeah.
But if you go in going, hey, here's why I say this, here's the facts, here's the positive and the negative, here's how it's beneficiary, now in you have a win-win situation.
Right.
In and this also applies with business. You always want a win-win situation where both parties are being benefited from.
Right.
And to me, that approach not only helps me, it helps them. We both
Hmm.
learn, we both grow, and we now because of it, we both have mutual respect with each other on it.
Right.
And there have been times that when I've been teaching other people, they came back going, "Hey, instead, I've got a different approach. Let's take a look at it." I'm going, "Yeah, sure, let's take a look at it." And there's been a few times that they've been right, and I'm like, "That's freaking fantastic."
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that. It's I think it's good to be able to be open with that.
Right.
Um, but the other thing with it I've noticed is like you were just talking about it is there are certain people who have had rough, sketchy, hard, brutal, beat up lives. And I've noticed that those few people that come out of it have been absolutely extraordinary. Even like
Mhm.
Kevin Hart or Joe Rogan, like
Right.
th- they or Arnold Schwarzenegger with
Mm.
they had brutal lives
Right.
and they had an epiphany or something in their life that went, you know what? I need to do better than what I
Hmm.
had before, and I need to help people in any way I can. And since uh, living in the US and being here with the mill and everything, I've had a weird year of realizing this stuff, that I am not essentially put on earth to make art. I'm
Mhm.
here to influence people in the best way I possibly can, so that
Mhm.
anyone and everyone benefits,
Mhm.
and to learn and grow together,
Right.
and just to be that third door for another person.
Mhm.
Because it's like I've talked to you about it, like off of the chats. Is I have had, man, brutal things in my life happen that
Yeah.
I generally just don't go and talk about.
Yeah.
Um, Extraordinarily brutal stuff, more than
Yeah.
most people. And I get what it's like to have literally nothing. So
Yeah.
if I can help other people have something, then I feel like I'm succeeding in life.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, like, I was kind of just letting you go on, but no, no, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think it's an interesting way to view the world, and I think it's an interesting way just to view, um, like your career and just in general, like how you feel about things. And
Mhm.
I think it's difficult also because I think for me, I think I've always felt like if you stay silent in a lot of things,
Mhm.
if you're not taking a side, in essence you're against the thing that like how do I phrase this, like like rather than sit in the fence, if you
Mhm.
decide to just where am I going with this?
Well, if
Basically, if you decided to not take a side, then you're taking the wrong side. It's what I usually thought was the case.
well, it's still taken aside, even if you don't take one. It's still
Right.
a side.
Yeah, yeah, of course. But I
It's
think that, but I think that's why, like, generally, I would want to get involved in things because I wouldn't be want to be seen as being anti or pro or other things. Like a lot of things have happened in the art world or happened in the real world. I think it's just
Mhm.
a thing where you want to almost chime in certain things, but then it's like I says, I think the people who have been more successful or do the more good in the world are the people who just stay back from a lot of those things and don't get involved, and I mean, or get involved at the right times when they feel like that's something that they should
Yeah.
be talking about. So
Mhm.
I know what you mean. I know what you're saying when you want to try and make an influence in the world, because it's difficult also to be part of the world but not be part of it. In essence, I think
But
it. Yeah.
I only jump in for giving my feedback to people when it's sought after, because it's to just go in and just put in your opinion uh, is an easy way to immediately make enemies, to immediately make problems happen.
Hmm.
And f- I just think that it's important just to just step back a little bit, step back and do what the number one job of an artist is, which is to observe, and just
Right.
observe, study, think, use logic and reasoning, try to understand, ask questions, do your research,
Hmm.
and talk about it in a adult fashion. I mean, we're all adults. Don't be a child.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I think you've almost hit the nail on the head there when we talk about art. Is that you're talking about like the job of an artist is to observe. I think
Mhm.
you're right. Like
Oh, it's the
and
number one job of an artist is to
oh
observe,
yeah, 100. I
hands
think
down.
it's something that I think even I've definitely forgot about, is that yeah, like there's times during wars or great famines or things that happen in the earth where the artist's job was not to all of a sense getting involved in that stuff per
Hmm.
se, but then to step back and capture it and illustrate it for
Yeah,
the rest of the world. And I think that's something that um, is hard because you want to get involved, you want to be part of it, you want to
yeah.
try and do good for people, but then I think sometimes the best thing you can do is like you say, take a step back and just observe and let the world kind of sort itself out.
And that's why we have all these masters. Even with today's age of digital images, we have
Right.
masters because they've had that experience observing the world and seeing it. And like I remember when photo bashing became a thing, and I was doing
Hmm.
it. Like it was, oh my god, it was a fucking sin to be photo bashing.
Right.
Uh, and but you still had people who were masters of it, and they've dealt with all those issues. And now, for someone who's like getting more and more into photo bashing, I can look up to those people and study them and understand their ways.
Yeah.
And it's based on what they observed and what they saw and how they approached it.
Yeah. I think it's also one of these things where you talk about like the standing back and observing thing where a lot of the guys who were probably doing photo bashing stuff really early on, who were getting slated
Mm,
for stuff or who were getting attacked and people were like, oh, that's the worst thing ever and you should be painting stuff. Those folk were just like, well, fuck it, I want to do it, and kept doing it. And now when people are looking
yeah.
to these masters to teach them, they're kind of like, yeah, like, well, I've been doing this for 4 years because I just thought fuck it and just done it and didn't worry about what people thought about it. And I think
Yeah.
that's almost been a detriment to my career in a sense where, like I've been stuck in this thing where I'm like, oh well, it's no cool to do this stuff, or photo bashing is seen as bad, so I need to paint everything by hand,
Mhm.
or this is bad, so I need to do this differently, rather
Well,
than just listen to my own compass, if you know what I mean.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Listen to your own compass about it, because I've had a few people recently come to me going like, "Hey, which one's better, to paint by hand or photo bash?" And
Mm,
it's like the answer isn't in which one is better. The answer is in which one's going to uh, get you to your end goal. And part of that end goal is, if you have a client and they're
mm-hmm.
paying you, which one's going to work more sufficiently.
Right.
So it's thinking in that manner. Is it
Yeah.
good to be able to paint? Absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Yeah.
Is it good to photo bash? Absolutely, 100%. But
Right.
it's knowing the difference between the two and going,
Mm-hmm.
okay, which one's going to help me in the
Give the
current
best
time
results.
period? Yeah, and give me the best result for the client. I mean,
Yes.
that's it.
Yeah.
So I when I talk to people about this, I try to go over the thinking way of it, the approach,
Right.
not just, hey, here's the answer and go do it. I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
everyone's going to have their own way. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like I get asked sometimes, like, Ian, what brush do you use? It's like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
really? Like,
The
why?
number one question in every
Why?
art stream ever is, yeah. Actually, see, because of that, I actually made a brush pack the other day because I made like a
Mm,
custom set of brushes, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to put it up on my Gumroad, so I put it up
mm,
for like $3 because like every time somebody asks me that now, I can like, this is an opportunity to just to give somebody a free brush pack. Here we go. So
mm,
yeah, like it's like when I was learning 3D environment stuff as well, where if I talked to environment artists and said to them, yeah, what would be the best software to learn? Is it this or is it this? And people are always like, it doesn't matter what software you're using, the end result is what matters. So if
mhm.
you feel you can get that end
Absolutely.
result better in Blender than you can
Hmm.
Maya, for instance, then you
Then go
use
for
Blender.
it.
Yeah, but like,
Exactly.
yeah, you shouldn't be tied to one thing basically.
Right. Well, I think it really, really depends. Either if it really depends if you're like freelancing, or if you're very gun ho on like, I want to be able to get this job
Mm,
at this studio, then yes, you're going to have to be a bit more specific
of course.
because of studio pipelines. But
Yes.
if it's freelance, it's complete free range. You can use and do whatever you want. The
Right.
rules are way, way less. Uh,
Yeah.
Same with map painting. Like when I do freelance map painting work, anything applies. I can make the image any way I pretty much want. And as long as
Right.
I
Yeah.
deliver the quality, they don't really care of what layer styles or whatever you use.
Of course. Yeah.
Um, and this whole thing in art of like, what program, what brush, how did you make that?
Yeah.
I j- like, man, can I just be brutal on this a little bit?
Yeah.
Like,
Please.
take the time to fucking figure it out for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's so important to take the time to figure it out for yourself, learn, experiment, look at
Mm-hmm.
how other people did their work, and just stop and just ask yourself, how did they do it? What was their approach?
Yeah.
And understand the reasoning behind it. And you learn by doing that, and then trying to imitate that effect, you learn a
Mm-hmm.
hundred times more than like, hey, here's the answer.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
But I think that's also a problem that results in just uh like modern day social media and
yeah,
the era of Google.
yeah,
Like if you want an answer to something, you can almost instantly just ask a question and get a response.
exactly.
Uh,
It's become more accessible, but
yeah.
I do think though you got to have that personal growth of trying to figure shit out for yourself.
Yes.
It's I actually it was in a book that you actually suggested to me, the hard things about hard things.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
he goes over that. Uh, Ben talks about that a lot. Figure shit
mm-hmm.
out on your own, and then after you've tried to figure it out, if you've still failed, then go and ask, or
Right.
do your research, then go and ask.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been guilty of not doing this process because when I started out, I was just asking for the answer, and I finally had someone say, like, just try to figure it out. And it's like, okay, fine.
But
And
then that goes back to like the oldest acronym, which is
mhm,
like teach a man to fish rather than giving
yeah,
them a fish. You know,
exactly.
you're going to get somebody who can then fish for themselves as opposed to people who are going to rely on you for food.
Mhm. Exactly. And it's just there's so much more power in figuring it out,
Hmm.
because then you can have an open mind of how do I now utilize this. So,
Right.
like for example, when I was learning about map painting of how to deal with chromatic aberration in an image, I now know 5 ways of doing it just in Photoshop. Now, after knowing Nuke and Adobe Bridge, uh, I now know 3 other ways of dealing with it. So
Yeah.
now I have this library of techniques that whenever I now have an image, I know exactly which one's going to work the best and why.
Right.
And now it's just by trying to figure it out by myself. I'm not saying I'm a master at it. It's just
Mm.
there is an importance of learning stuff for yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I think it's almost like I don't know. It's weird when you look back at almost. I say I use this word sparingly in my career, but the things I've done over the last couple of years. That have started and honest just curiosity and ended with you mean god thinking going back way back in the day. I remember trying to ask a concept artist, this was like 2015 or something, but like trying to ask a concept artist how much they made, which is almost like a no-no to people, like asking them their wages and stuff, but like
There's a trick to that. There's a third door on that.
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. There's a way to get
Mhm.
around those things, but then like it's like you have to almost sometimes go through those trials and tribulations to
Yeah.
come out the other end and be like, well,
Well,
yeah, I shouldn't be asking those questions, obviously. So yeah,
the only issue I ever had with that was I had a bunch of people tell me like when you first start out with freelance, you got to do work for free. And
right,
I was like, I at that point I went, no, I'm not doing
of
that.
course,
Just not a chance.
right,
I don't think you should do things for free just for a little bit of exposure, even when you're starting out.
mm,
For me, I'm very much against that. I would
right,
tell artists say no to that,
right,
because it's taken you a long time to get to that position of, okay, I want to start freelancing. I mean, even
yeah,
if it was a year or two, so you have learned. You don't need to
mhm,
be taking uh, a year or two, or even 5 years of doing free work. Well,
right,
how do you live off of that then?
yeah,
So I always tell people, like, if people come to you asking you to do free work, tell them
mm,
no. Like,
right.
everything has a price, essentially.
Yeah,
But
well, and definitely, it's one of these things that was about for a lot of years, where people were saying about, yeah, you have to work for free to get
mm,
exposure or do things, and it's a thing. I also have thought, I don't want to be in that, because for years, I walked away from a really good
mm,
and well paid job to come back and be an artist, and then
mm,
I went through 5 years of university and learning to do that, but
mm,
I was like, I've kind of paid my dues in that sense, and I want to work at a studio and start at the bottom rungs, but I'm not going to do it for nothing just because I'm
mm.
passionate or I'm keen, which is
Yeah.
something the problem you get in film studios. So yeah,
There has to be a certain benefit to both sides. It's
yes,
again the win-win scenario.
yeah,
Uh, and part of it's just like even when I was getting into freelance, I asked a bunch of artists like, "How do you learn what to charge?" And there's this like secret Illuminati of how do you charge for clients and how do you figure out your price? And
Right.
I was like, this is, and I did not get the light of day when I asked people like, how do you figure out what to charge? No
Right.
one would tell me.
Yeah.
It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen in the art world, in the art community, of
Hmm.
this secret order of knowledge of how do you uh, make a price for what you do.
Right.
And I just, when I had this one person tell me about this, I was like, this is just stupid. So I
Yeah.
went, okay, and I'll spill the beans on this for the entire world to know because it's not that hard. Literally figure out wherever you are located,
Hmm.
literally in the world,
Hmm.
figure out what your bills are for that month and
Hmm.
for the year. Do the
Right.
cost of what it is, budget it out for the whole year.
Hmm.
Now take that amount and add, I don't know, an extra 10, 20, or $30,000,
Hmm.
and on top of that to deal with taxes and whatever. And then with
Hmm.
it, put in the programs and the licensing of stuff and throw that in and like calculate it of like, okay, if I have a Nuke license, a Maya license, Adobe license, Substance, Marvelous, like calculate the cost of that and then put that in the cost of your monthly bills.
Right.
And from there then you can figure out how much it is hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly.
Hmm.
So it's you just got to look at it that way.
Right.
And that's how I figured out what my starting price point was.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's what I always tell other people if you're trying to figure out what you need to be charging, start off with figuring out where you're located and what the budget is around that area
Hmm.
in terms of living costs. And from there,
Right.
do the calculations, do the math,
Right.
and you should be pretty well set to go to start.
Yeah, because obviously you spent initially a lot of time working on your freelance stuff,
Hmm.
and then moved to a studio. So probably when the time came to work at a studio, you had a better idea of like
Oh,
your
yeah.
self worth. Yeah, like what you should be charging or what you should be getting paid for that job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, granted, working in a studio, the price of that's going to be different than freelance,
of course, yeah,
drastically, but
yeah,
it does allow you to know. I mean, because with freelance, you have to basically budget yourself out between 6 months to a year
right,
of no work, just in case.
right,
And for me personally, I try to make sure that I have at least a whole year, not just 6 months. For me personally, I want to be able to have a whole year.
right,
But with working in a studio, yeah, the that number is going to be drastically different.
right, yeah,
Um, and I just think that I mean, you can always Google stuff, which is fine, but you're not going to ever get an exact number. So I would just go with based on like just figure out where you are and calculate it.
yeah,
Uh, do find out what the minimum wage is of your area and go based on that for your
right,
first job or something. And then like the other part that I've told people is there's nothing wrong with asking the studio when you're getting your first job of like, hey, what's your price point? There's nothing wrong
yeah,
with it. There really isn't. It's people are very afraid to do that, but there's nothing wrong with it. Just ask them.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a conversation you can have in itself about
Mm-hmm.
just rates and ways
Mm-hmm.
to approach studios so that you're putting your best foot forward or you're
Yeah.
maybe getting the best offer you can. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also difficult um when you maybe feel like your portfolio is lacking or it's not quite on par with where you want to be. Then you feel like you almost can't
Mm-hmm.
uh ask for like decent wage rates or decent amounts of money because you don't want to seem like you're a junior artist asking for a mid salary or a mid asking for a seniors. And
Mm-hmm.
because it makes so much of it comes down to portfolio, right? So much comes of it like what work you're actually doing and who you've worked with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that and then the amount of knowledge you also gain also does benefit how much you make. Um, I have this quote on my iPhone that I heard from someone once about money,
Okay.
And the quote is, "The amount of cash you want in is based on the amount of effort you put out," which is so freaking perfect on this because of the if you want to be making, let's say, $100,000 a year, well, you got to put in the effort,
Right.
the $100,000 worth of effort into being able to achieve that $100,000.
Right, yeah, yeah. I think I've heard that before. It's said a
Yeah.
different way, but similarly, yeah. So if you were wanting like $1 million salary, then
Mhm,
are you doing the work that will get you $1 million?
mhm.
So yeah,
And the other part is understanding the value of time.
right.
Uh, it's understanding that when you first start off, yeah, you're going to be pretty low, but
Hmm.
if you keep working at it and you keep learning and growing and understanding how business works and how money works and how it rotates, uh, and know personal finance, then
Right,
yes, you can make yourself of like by the time you're 30, make sure you have 100 grand, and then by the time you're 50, to make sure you have $1 million. And how do you do that? How do you figure out that like every 10 years you have to make $100,000 in the bank
right,
or whatever. So
right.
you just got to be smart about it, and it and it's just that quote is so on point,
Yeah,
that the amount of cash you want in your bank is based on the amount of effort you put out. Is so accurate.
yeah. I think it's also, again going back to Joe Rogan and Kevin Hart
Mhm,
speaking, it was about a thing where Kevin is part of I don't want to say coalition, but a thing he's working together with JP Morgan where they're teaching
yeah. Yeah, mhm,
young black kids in inner cities how they give them financial advice basically about their future, like mortgages,
mhm.
401ks, things they need to do to plan for the future. And I think
Yeah.
that information is definitely lacking in those social circles, but
Oh,
also
very much so.
I think is also lacking in just the general population and especially
Mhm,
the youth groups. So, kids, when I left school, my priority wasn't having a pension, wasn't having any savings. Free credit cards were a thing for me that's
mhm,
mostly how I got into debt when I was younger was loans and free credit cards. But um,
mhm.
people don't teach you or give you the tools or the help to show you that if you invest even like $50 or £50 in this bond,
Well,
it could be 100,000 in 10 years and 20 years. So
right, but in order to understand that, you gotta know what money is. You need to
yeah,
understand the value of it and
hmm
how it works. There's a lot of, I mean, we're going more into the business side of this, but
hmm
most people don't understand that money is a circle that rotates. It's not a one-way street.
hmm
It goes around a lot, and
hmm
so it's how do you basically put your foot in that circle to stop it so that you're getting the water. How do you get that stream to flow towards you rather than away from you?
right,
And so the way I would tell people is like, if you want to learn money, go work in a restaurant. Oh man, I could not encourage this more. If you want to learn how money works, go work in a restaurant, be a waiter, learn
hmm
how clients work, learn how tips work, learn how you make money based on your hour and weekly. Like,
hmm
learn that shit, because you're gonna walk out of there knowing so much about money that, like, when I took personal finance in college,
hmm
man, it was a waste of my money. It was literally a waste of my own money to learn how money worked from them. I
oh
didn't learn
wow,
a damn thing. It
yeah,
wasn't until I went and got my own jobs and freelanced and had to work in a steel factory making glass, or working at a car wash, or being a waiter or whatever, and dealing with all that shit,
yeah,
that I was able to learn, like, okay, here's what money is. Here's the
yeah,
currency of money. Here's the value of money. Here's the
yeah,
time of money,
yeah.
and knowing how that works.
Yeah, I mean, like even when I was talking to James in his stream the other day, yeah, modern day James, and he was saying like, apart from the fact that he has like made sure that his
Mhm,
portfolio is very diversified in the fact that he has a revenue stream from YouTube, he has a revenue
mhm.
stream from
Yeah.
Patreon, from Twitch, from other things, but then they all collectively, like if one thing goes away, then he has a way to compensate,
Mhm,
so other things will keep him floating. But then he was also talking about like, oh, I've just recently being in New York, I've just recently got into the stock market and
mhm.
understanding how
Yeah.
stocks work and get investment money in that. So, like, yeah, I think if you're very clever with your money and you invest it wisely,
Mhm,
that's probably. But then again, I think that's something that you're not really taught from a young age. Like your parents
Yeah.
almost will not teach you about savings or anything like that when you're very young. It's only when you get to and being a bit older, you're
Mhm.
thinking, oh, I need to think about my future 10, 20 years from now.
Mhm. You got to start thinking about it. I think from an early stage,
Hmm.
and the best way to deal with it is just go and make a bank account. Just go and
Yeah.
deal with that and talk to someone at the bank.
Yep.
There's books on it, like the one I mentioned earlier, The Hard Things About Hard Things. You're
Hmm.
gonna either get one or two things out of that entire book. Either you understand his hard life that he had, or you're
Hmm.
gonna understand the business side of what he had to deal with.
Right.
Read the book from like Bill Gates and what
Hmm.
he had to deal with.
Right.
Just learn how money works. It's a
Yeah.
complicated thing, but it's doable.
Right.
And then you'll you'll enter this like Illuminati of how money works between freelancers.
Yeah. But then
You'll
I
get
think,
that. Yeah.
but it's a good thing to have. You know what I mean? Like it's a good thing to have that knowledge as an artist as well. Because
Mhm.
I remember somebody saying ages ago about when you look at freelance artists, they're not freelance artists; they're small business owners. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because for a
exactly.
lot of for a lot of people, freelance artists, they are small businesses, and you have to do things like your taxes. You have to
Mhm.
invest money in gear and training. There's a lot that goes into being freelance as opposed to working in a studio where a lot of
Mhm.
things are done for you. But then even when people work in studios, they still see themselves as a separate entity, right? Because at any
Yeah.
time, you know, that job could end, like
Right.
for you with the furlough, with the virus.
Mhm.
If that then is not a thing, you were telling me you still have like enough savings that like you could
Yeah.
potentially stay in Canada for the rest of the year. So, that's obviously been something that you thought about ahead of time was like, you know,
Oh,
I
always.
I know where my job is right now, but
Mhm.
if that changes in the next couple of months, what is my backup plan? What's my thought if
Yeah,
something's wrong?
it's for me personally, I have different forms of revenue that
Right.
I mean, I don't want to get into it, but
No, no, of course.
I and part of that revenue also is reflected in my portfolio as well. In
Right.
not my financial portfolio, but my artistic portfolio as well of making certain type of work that's going to get me future jobs.
Right.
And so I'm going to try and gear the conversation towards that again. Like
Yeah.
this is why I say to people like right now, learn
Mhm.
new skills because when companies come back,
Mhm.
if you go from knowing one skill set to knowing 10, well,
Mhm.
now your price has gone up and
Right.
you can be much more diverse in locations of where you want to be in the world
Right.
and more diverse in a studio of
Mhm.
what you're capable of doing
Right.
and you'll be able to charge differently based on those different jobs
Mhm.
and it gives you way more it gives you leverage.
Right.
It just gives you more leverage
Yeah,
to
you can
be
demand more things of the studio for
yeah,
yourself,
yeah.
which I mean, which don't think is like a bad thing. It's not bad to want to be financially secure, or It's not a bad thing to want to be paid your worth.
Mhm. And
As long as you're still thinking about the studio's overall goal, you can still have your own needs
mhm.
met as well.
The did you grow up poor at all? Did you grow up with like not a lot
No,
or
I grew up with
no?
everything. I had a lot.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like we weren't rich per se.
Mhm.
We didn't have like
The
a
golden
mansion.
spoon. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I mean, like, we had enough money that, like,
Okay.
we have a nice house. Like, we could
Mm,
have a nice holiday. Like, it was never. I didn't. We weren't poor. We didn't struggle.
okay.
Yeah,
The man, that's awesome. Whew, I
yeah.
wish I had that. The man for I think it's I've always kind of noticed that uh, a certain group of people who either didn't have a lot or had nothing tend to
Hmm.
become some of the most successful people, like Bill Gates or Steve
Right.
Jobs or whatever,
Yeah.
or Ashton Kutcher, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's because
Yeah, because he's like a tech mogul now. He has
yeah,
an actual like business like
mhm.
going just now as a startup. So like
Yeah,
it's
he's
and the,
got a few.
and the thing is with me like as well is that we when I was initially born and quite young, my dad and my mum didn't have like great jobs, but then because my dad worked really hard, he eventually had like a really good job. So like I would say by the time I was like maybe 14, 15, we started to see like a little bit more money in the family, and we could we could spend that a bit
Mhm.
more, we could have more things. So it's not
Yeah,
been a thing I've had all my life, but yeah, like it's definitely a thing. I think that those, like you said, those things instill a sense
mhm.
in you of either
Yeah,
hard work or the
yeah.
way you see the world.
Because I get what it's like to be poor, man.
Hmm.
I've only recently talked a little bit about this, but
Hmm.
a good friend of mine from Minnesota, he knows about this.
Hmm.
Was that I I can't believe I'm saying this. I
Hmm.
used to actually, I was a hobo on the street for like 3 months of my life.
Oh wow.
Yeah, in Minneapolis, where it
Hmm.
was right after college. My parents didn't want me to be with them,
Hmm.
for me to get on my feet, and I had literally nothing.
Right.
And for 3 months, I was just on the street trying to get jobs, and I didn't get the light of day, man.
Right.
Um, and a dear friend of mine, John, he was like, "Oh man, you're on the streets. Like, hey, come stay with me."
Hmm.
And he was working in that restaurant that I got my first job, one of my
Right.
first jobs.
Hmm.
And the apartment that I got into, the
Hmm.
landlord was not very sold on me living there because he's like, you don't have a bank account, you just got a job, you can't prove that you have a job.
Hmm.
And it was like, all right, first off, like, okay, he went like, you don't have a bank account. That afternoon, I went and made a bank account, brought it, showed it to him, like, there it is. And he's like, okay,
Hmm.
good. Then he's like, okay, you need a job. It's like, okay, great. Went, got a job that afternoon, came back. And I lived in this most ghetto, sketchy apartment
Hmm.
ever that I've ever lived in.
Right.
And me and this friend of mine, John, we lived in that apartment for the first 6 months to a year.
Hmm.
We literally slept on the floor. No furniture, no electricity, no internet, nothing.
Wow.
Literally nothing in that apartment. We slept on the floor. That was it. Our refrigerator was empty. We ate at
Hmm.
the restaurant because it was free food. We
Yeah.
were given one meal a day, and that was our
Hmm.
meal. And it was, man, it was so surreal when when I bought my first computer. I bought my first iMac. It
Hmm.
was, man, like that when you get that first $1,000 in your bank account that you earned, that you sacrificed for, that you bled for,
Wow.
that, man, something in you changes. For me,
Yeah.
it did,
Yeah.
because I understood what money could get me and the
Hmm.
value of it and the time of it and how
Right.
that's going to grow.
Hmm.
And I get what it's like to literally be given nothing, have nothing, not even a person give you a chance.
Hmm.
I get it, and it sucks, and I don't. So that's why, like, when I try to help people, I try to get them to that third door so that
Yeah.
they know how to deal with it and be upfront with, here's how money works, here's how portfolios work, here's how you make an artistic portfolio, here's
Right.
how shit in life works. Because I've gone through a lot of crap in my life, man,
Yeah.
and I don't want to see other people have that,
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I've met a few other people who've been in similar positions as me.
Right.
Like a good friend of mine, Kyle. He's an amazing compositor. The guy's a badass at what he does.
Hmm.
But his life, he was almost a gangster way back in the day, and he's now a compositor.
Wow.
Same with a friend of mine, Alan. Like
Mhm.
he was drawing the original Batman comics for like a dollar a page,
Right.
freelancing in LA, trying to make something of himself. So
Wow.
I try to connect with myself to other people who've been in those similar boats of, I have nothing and I want something to become something.
Right.
And it's definitely not an easy journey, man. It's still tough.
I think that's very interesting when we talk about a lot of that stuff because like a lot of your stories or a lot of things you've went through, like it resonates where I've listened to like people like Matt Damon who when they were very young and trying to get in the industry, they were doing very similar things where they were like, they were sleeping on floors, they were apartment hunting every day because they couldn't afford where they lived. They lived off like rice and noodles
Mhm.
because they had no other
Yeah.
money. So
Yep.
like, I think an interesting prospect is that you look a lot of the successful artists and people who are in this industry. It's very similar in respects to people who are trying to become actors. Like it's a very as an artist, it's a very niche industry.
Mhm.
It's a very
You learn
it's
how
very
to
hard.
hustle.
You do. Yeah, it's very hard to find work. It's very hard to keep work.
Mhm.
You have to be super reliable and well presented and have a good
Mhm.
portfolio to stand out. So there's a lot of parallels if you're looking at how actors become
Mhm.
actors and how artists become artists because actors are artists. They are the
Mhm.
same kind of thing in essence,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, like there's a whole slew of things you've said. I'm like, I can remember listening to Matt Damon talk about, like the things he done early on in his career to try and make it, to try and survive, basically. While he
Mhm.
was going to auditions, like I think he was also working, like as a busboy or doing
Yeah.
like jobs in restaurants because
Mhm.
he was trying to you know, do like the serving stuff during the day, and then at night he would go to
Mhm.
auditions, or he would go to auditions all day, and then at night he would work in the restaurant
Yeah.
to either eat. Like there was a really famous story with Chris Pratt, the guy who was the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like he talked about how when he was initially auditioning, he was basically like there was a thing what they called I think it was called the alley,
Mhm.
where like it was the hallway between the restaurant and the kitchen, and like if people didn't eat like their food. He would basically from the thingy the restaurant to the kitchen. He would try and eat their food in the hall, to feed himself basically.
Mhm.
Because there was even one funny story where like he had like this woman when she was coming to order stuff, she was like, "What would you recommend?" And Chris was like, "Oh, like the 15-ounce porter, like that's exactly what
Mhm.
you want.
Yeah.
It's the best thing you can order." So she ordered it, and she's like, "Oh," she had like 3 bites, and she's like, "Oh, I can't eat anymore." And he's like, "Oh, great!"
Mhm.
So on the way back, he started to eat the steak and basically tried to get like this whole 15-ounce steak down in like five
Yeah.
minutes. And then
Jeez.
when he came back to get the bill, the
Mhm.
woman was like, "You know what? Actually, my dog would probably really love that steak. Could you bring it back out in a doggy bag?" And he was like, "Oh shit!" So he had to like go and like talk to his friend who was one of the chefs and be like, "Dude, I need a 15-ounce porter right now. No questions asked. I need."
Oh man.
Oh
When you
god.
when you work in places like that, you get the weirdest stories, dude.
Yeah.
But I
I,
just
I
think,
think
yeah.
the
Mhm.
struggles are very real. That they're very
Yeah.
similar to people who are trying to chase a dream and make something of themselves. Always have to endure like a lot of shit very early on.
Yeah. I mean, I still have to at times, and
Mm.
it's life, man. Life ain't easy.
Yeah,
Life's a pain in the ass, and
yeah,
either you kick back and
hmm
you figure it out, or it's going to
yeah,
control you, man.
yeah. And
It's
we're not saying
definitely
this stuff because like it's impossible or don't become an artist because it's horrible. Like I think there's
yeah.
just a very very harsh reality sometimes of
Mhm.
how difficult it is to be very successful at doing this career.
Yeah. Because I was told that quite a bit. Like even when my parents were talking to me about like, all right, who about college and who's going to go to college between me and my brother.
Right,
They when we were living in Ethiopia at the time, and my brother was just graduating, and
hmm
my parents sat down going like, hey, my brother was going for fuck, I always forget what it is. It was something with social economics and being a diplomat.
right,
And my parents sat us down and they went like, okay, we can only afford to co-sign for one of you to go to college. So we're going to go
right.
with the one that we think is going to be actually the most successful in life.
Right.
And they gave it to him.
Oh god.
Yeah, and then my dad looked at me and he went, Ian, you're going to have to learn how to say paper or plastic, or would you like fries with that? And right there and then, I made a promise to my parents, to my
Mhm,
family, that I would never, never in my fucking life, that I would
mhm,
ever work in a fast food restaurant, not a
mhm.
KFC, not a McDonald's, Wendy's, Applebee's, you name it, that I would
Right.
not work in such a place like that. And
Right.
to this day, I have yet
Hmm.
to ever work in a place like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like
And
the worst you done was like the waiter thing, but then it's a very common job in America.
but the waiting job was in a very upscale restaurant. It wasn't a fast food restaurant. It
Right,
was in a much more classier area.
right,
Being a chef, being a cook, being a waiter in a pub that was
mm,
much more. It was way harder work
right,
than I would say of working in McDonald's.
right,
And to me, I'm happy that I told him that like never in my life will I ever fucking in that. I got
right,
close once to the restaurant that I worked in closed, and the chef went and became a manager at a McDonald's nearby. And
right,
she messaged me like, "Hey, Ian, I need another cook. Would you be up for it?" And
right,
I said yes. And on my way home from the previous restaurant,
right.
I thought about that time of like, man, I told my parents I would never do it. I gotta
Right.
fucking hold that promise. I can't
Of
break
course.
that.
Yeah.
And I went and I turned down the job. Like, nope, sorry, not doing it.
Mhm.
And I waited a little bit and I got my first commission job as an artist a week later.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
mean, like, it's a very I think it's a very common tale at these points where the things you have to do, but then, I mean, I
yeah.
remember Max Berman's talk at Industry Workshops 2018, and he talked about how he worked at one of the first studio jobs he had, and then,
Mhm.
like he always says, he left that prematurely to go do freelance, and the work was so dry at the time, like, he almost had to go back to waiting tables, and he was like, talk about humbling, working on these huge IPs and movies and then having to go back to almost waiting tables for a living. Like,
Mhm.
um, but then I think those are the things that make you more appreciative of the opportunities you get beyond that. Then after the fact,
Absolutely.
um, so I think it's almost like a trial by fire. Like it's a good thing to happen in a sense that
Mhm.
you're going to come out of that with a better life experience. You're going to come
Yeah.
out of that with an idea and an appreciation for like what you've had to go through. I mean, like even I was very spoiled at my young age where I didn't have to work for much. And then even when I got my job, it was because my dad basically set up an interview with the company.
Mhm.
So when I left and I spent a lot of years when I was at university and when I was at college working places like Tesco's or local supermarket chain and like some bargain places for like, selling stuff. It was like, all those
Yeah.
shitty jobs I had have now prepared me for looking into like how pleased I'll be when I get a job that is actually, pays well and treats people well and yeah, like I definitely
Mhm.
feel like it's something you have to go through, almost a rite
Yeah.
of passage. Um
It's and people who get through that and grow from it, and they all
mhm,
have a weird realization, like something in you changes, something happens, you have a deeper understanding of the world you live in and the universe that you're a part of.
right,
and and with it, then you get this point of like, what do I want to leave behind with
right.
it?
Yeah,
And I just I if and I want to help people with that,
yeah.
as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, it makes
uh,
sense. Like you want to try and because you've been through a bunch of shit and you've felt rejected at times by studios and stuff. Then you want to make sure that people don't go through a similar thing or don't have to endure the shit you went through. So yeah, it's a very common thing I think, especially that's why probably a lot of professional guys want to teach later down the line because they want to give back and help people
yeah.
ascend
Mhm.
past the bullshit.
Mhm. Exactly. And at that point, it comes down to if you are helping someone, is for that second party to how much effort are they going to put in? Are they
Right,
committed or not?
right, yeah,
Because I'm not one for uh, there's a certain slang term. It's called pussyfooting it,
hmm,
where you're uh, putting in only 10%, your partner's putting in 90%,
right,
and that 10% person is constantly giving up continuously,
right,
um, and just expecting the answer to be there no matter what.
right,
So you just, if you want something, go fucking get it. Literally, just do it. That's why
yeah,
Nike's brand is so successful more than anything else. Is literally
right.
because their slogan is just do it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, but I mean, it makes sense to a thing where I think even I've went through that in respect in some parts of my life where I've been the 10%, and I've definitely felt like, I've been more lackluster than I've wanted to be. But then I think
Yeah,
it's also hard because you've got to acknowledge stuff like mental illness and things that people go through. And for people who stay in that situation for the entire life, I know it's hard to get out of stuff like that. But I think part of my downfall was the fact that the job I was at, you could put in a lot of minimal effort and still get
mhm,
paid at the end of the month.
yeah,
You weren't fighting for your job. You could sit about all day and drink tea. You would still get paid at the end
yeah,
of the day. And then coming into an industry where like people are literally fighting tooth and nail
mhm,
to get work,
yeah,
you're then the complete opposite. You're the other end of the spectrum. So that's
mhm,
hard for people also, I think, just to get in that mindset, because also at school, and most universities and colleges, you can sail through a lot of courses by doing minimal work and get
yeah,
decent grades. And it doesn't mean you'll get a job at the end of it. So it's a very common tale, I think. And
mhm,
I think it's one of these industries where you have to spend a couple of years really adjusting your mindset and thinking about what's the end result and how do I want to come out of this at the end. And
mhm,
I think for me, it was like there was definitely a defeatist attitude in me a lot of the last year. But the last couple of months, I thought to myself, I can either sit and keep feeling sorry for myself, or I can do something about it. And luckily, I chose the latter. But like, yeah, it
yeah.
was there was a big
It
struggle.
it makes me think of uh, the song from Eminem. If with what his lyric was,
I'll lose yourself.
yeah, when he says like, if you have one moment,
One
one
chance, one
opportunity,
opportunity.
would you take it? And I've had a few of those moments in my life when I had that one opportunity and I went, okay,
Right,
that's my one chance to fucking prove yourself.
right.
And I've talked to other people about this that
Mhm,
when you have that one opportunity at one moment of sliver in time, you
mhm,
better be ready. You better nail it. You
mhm.
have to be on point with it
Yeah,
because if you get it working right, uh, things will come out of it well for you. And like one of those points for me was actually Max Berman's class.
right,
Uh, because I've told you about this, and same on another podcast was like when I was taking Max's class, I didn't have the money for it at
right,
all. I was already working like 70 hours a week,
right.
and Max was like, "Hey, I'm going to give you 1 week to get the money to pay for the class." And that
Mhm,
night I got a second job. So I was working like 130 hours a week.
mhm,
Um, it was just all day, every day working. And within that week, I made the cash and bought Max's class. And then I quit one of the jobs.
right.
And it was that opportunity, that one moment that was like, okay, I'm going to show you some of the basics. And
Mhm,
then a few months later, I got a freelance job because a client saw like, hey, you improved, and we
mhm,
need some work done. Uh,
mhm.
we'll hire you for that job.
Right,
So it's you got to make those opportunities happen for you. Um,
right.
and when they're in front of you, get on the bus.
Mm.
Get on that. I can't believe I'm saying this. Get get on the bus of luck, because that luck might not ever come back, and it might go to somebody else.
I think, yeah, because somebody ages ago broke this down. I think what is the perfect scenario is that luck is preparedness meets opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
if you're prepared enough, if you have the skill set and an opportunity comes along, then yeah, your luck is probably on your side, because then you're ready to step into that role. But then if you're not prepared and then an opportunity comes along,
mhm,
then you're like, oh well, fuck, well the bus passes you by.
yeah,
So
and you got to be able to realize and see what that luck is to
yeah,
be able to grab it. Otherwise, it's
yes,
going to be gone, and you're going to be back in that rabbit hole of, well, shit, what do I do?
right.
Um,
Yeah.
so hop on that train and go for it.
I couldn't agree more to him. Well, anyway, we've been talking for a long time, and I think that's probably a good note to end on. Is definitely be prepared. But um, yeah, man, we can definitely we'll try and get you back on again at one point, even just to talk about life in general, because I think it's always good talking to me about just
Mhm.
life and other learnings and stuff that you go through, because yeah, you definitely always got a bit of a good mind when it comes to that stuff. And yeah, like if you guys have enjoyed this content, because we didn't speak about art per se, but we did talk about maybe just a lot of really good life lessons and things that, well, things that will also help you in your career, apart from just drawing and painting. Like there's other parts to being an artist
Yeah.
that aren't just the art parts. So, um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I think this has been a good format. But like, you guys can let me know in the comments, and you know, we could even maybe at one point do a live Q&A thing where
Mhm.
Ian could come on the Twitch or YouTube, and we could do like a live either feedback session or portfolio reviews. I know Ian would always be up for stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and even if you're not a map painter, like because Ian can also talk to, you know, doing stuff for concept and other things. So I definitely think that there's a broad spectrum we could cover. But
Mhm.
if you guys just let me know in the comments what you think, how you feel about these episodes, if they've been, because these are kind of like, I used to do a small series called Thinking Out Loud where I would just talk about like what I was thinking and feeling at the time.
Oh, that's a good
Um,
idea.
but then I think these are also good opportunities to. Uh, I might even label this episode as a Thinking Out Loud episode. It might be a good opportunity to try and maybe boost that part of it.
Yeah. Think out
And
loud. Yeah.
yeah, because it is a very good thing where like a lot of people will have a lot of thoughts in their head and they've just not got the platform to talk about them. So I think that's where I kind of got it from. But yeah, we might label this actually as a Thinking Out Loud episode because it was a really good in depth look into just the general feeling of like
Yeah,
the
because
world and art.
it's good to talk about the art and what makes art and whatever. It's great, but
Yeah,
I think it's just as important and valuable to talk about the struggles in life and the
yeah.
realities of it.
Yeah, money, handling yourself as a person,
Mhm.
approaching studios, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. It's more the nitty gritty of what
Mhm.
it takes because people will, you know, I've got 50 other talks on my podcast and my channel that all talk about, you know, how to make it as an artist or what to put in your portfolio, but I've
There's
not talked in depth a lot with people about just like life.
yeah, there's no one answer to how do you get into a studio and get the work. There's
Yes,
multiple and multiple answers. There
yes,
it and I always get annoyed when people are like, no, this is the one way. No, it's not. There's many ways. It's
yes.
multiple.
There is, everybody has their own story, like from,
Mhm.
you know, like Mark Burnett being like 17, 18 years old in Canada, getting an opportunity to come work in Blizzard at that age because he was putting stuff up in DeviantArt, you know, to like people who have went to school. Like there's a million different variations of that to answer that question. So
Mhm.
yeah, like I don't feel like there's, I agree with you, I don't think there's one way in particular that works. But yeah, definitely we'll put this up. I think we'll put it up under Thinking Out Loud and see how it works. And
Mhm.
yeah, see how people feel about it, and if you want more of this kind of content, then definitely let me know, and
Yeah.
we can get Ian back on to talk or other people. But definitely, I think Ian's a good barometer for these things. So yeah, but
Well, I
just to say thank.
appreciate it.
I was going to say, man, thank you for coming on. Thank you for giving up your time. I know you're super busy just now, and you're doing a million things. So,
Hey,
um,
it's an honor, man. I really appreciate it, and if I can help people with this advice, yeah, man, that's awesome.
yes.
Yeah. So thank you.
So yeah, no worries. So yeah, again, guys, if you got any questions for Ian or anything you want to talk about, leave it in the comments. Depending where you're listening to this, we have YouTube versions, Spotify, SoundCloud, Anchor. We're on a lot of different Google Podcast places. So yeah, wherever you look for us, just look there. But also check out our main YouTube channel where you can subscribe and help out. We're going to also try and start streaming a bit more as well. So keep an eye on Twitch. Also, we have a Digital Artcast Twitch. So and you know, I've said I'm going to be doing it for ages, but I need to make an Instagram account for the podcast because it's been too long. I can't keep deferring people to just my personal one. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Get
Okay,
on
guys,
it.
I know I'm going to get on it. Just do it. Okay, right. Okay, guys, thanks again to Ian, and thanks for listening, guys, and we'll
Thank
speak
you.
to you later. Bye.
Bye.